Good morning. It is our third morning in Ireland. This has been my lifelong dream to come out here to Ireland. Why, hello there. Welcome to my channel. A few housekeeping items before we get into the crux of today's video. You don't know me because this is my first video. So, hi, I'm Caitlin and I am currently 31 years old. And the reason why that is relevant is because when I turned 30 back at the end of 2022, I made a travel goal for myself. I decided that for the next decade, I was going to try and visit one new country every single year, so that theoretically, by the time I'm turning 40, I can say that I have visited 10 different new countries. Traveling is something that has been a huge interest of mine for most of my life, but in my younger years, it felt virtually inaccessible for a multitude of reasons, time and money being a couple of those big ones. And I finally reached a point as I was turning 30 where I realized I could do some more traveling. And I felt like there was just so much of the world that I needed to be able to see. I wanted to have new experiences. I essentially wanted to just get out of my own backyard and just see what else was out there. So I decided that I wanted to document this journey of visiting the 10 different countries over 10 different years. So if that's something you're interested in just signing on to a 10-year-long journey with me for, feel free to go ahead and subscribe. Now, the first country I visited was back in 2023, and I recognize that we are already in the second half of 2024, so let's just pretend that I'm not behind on this. We will catch up fairly quickly, and then from here on out, any international trips that I'm documenting, you will be seeing happening in real time. So the very first country I wanted to visit was Ireland. Ireland has been at the top of my travel bucket list pretty much ever since I was a little kid. I was raised in an Irish American family, and I was also an Irish dancer for 10 years of my younger life, and I felt such a deep connection to my Irish heritage. And so getting to visit Ireland kind of felt like getting to visit the motherland in a way. And when I was younger, Ireland just felt so far away, almost like this dream fairy tale land that was so far removed from anything I was ever experiencing in my own life here in the United States. And when I did finally get to go, it really was surreal. It was one of those moments where if I were suddenly to be on my deathbed one day, if I had never once visited Ireland, I would have regretted that for the rest of my life. So for the sake of being able to finally relax and sleep at night, I was like, you gotta do Ireland first. So that's what we did. So this is going to be like a travel vlog of my time in Ireland, and I'm going to share some insights I got from that trip, places I went. I will also link the places that I stayed when I was in Ireland. And if you're someone who is more interested in travel within the United States, don't worry, I got you. I have plenty of videos that I am going to be making about travel within the United States. Those videos will be coming as well. But for now, international trip. So I spent 7 days total touring through the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And I went with one of my cousins, and I had the really fun idea that we should celebrate St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. Now, I had heard a lot of different people saying that trying to celebrate St. Patrick's Day in Ireland could possibly be a disappointment simply because Ireland does not go all out on the festivities the way that the US does. But I can say personally, Dublin at least is the place to be for St. Patrick's Day. One thing that really stuck out to me is the floats that were included in the St. Patrick's Day parade in Dublin were unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was so unique that if you happened to just show up and you didn't know it was St. Patrick's Day and like maybe you were ignoring the sea of green in the crowd watching, you actually might have no idea what this parade is celebrating. They had aliens on the floats and like big like wooden dolls walking and like lizards, and it was just so fascinating to watch this parade because I really didn't understand like the symbolism or the significance of these different floats going by, but they were really cool to see. And I remember like taking all these pictures and videos so I could show my family back home because I was like, I don't even know how I would describe this parade to them. So parade was very cool. A thing that I was not sure about in celebrating St. Patrick's Day in Dublin was whether or not people were going to be dressed up in like silly costumes. Because in the US, people will like dress in full like leprechaun outfits and like goofy hats with the beard. But I wasn't sure in Dublin if that's something people still do or if that's just a very American thing. And lo and behold, there's just as many fun, silly costumes in Dublin on St. Patrick's Day as there are in Chicago. So if you are considering celebrating St. Patrick's Day in Dublin and you really want to wear your leprechaun hat with the attached orange beard, go ahead, because there's going to be 400 other guys wearing the same thing. And once the parade ended, everyone just flocked to the bars, and there really wasn't any space to get in anywhere in a bar to continue the celebrations, and there was absolutely no way that we were going to be getting into Temple Bar. There was a line that wrapped down the alleyway from the bar 2 hours before it even opened. And my cousin and I had landed in Ireland that morning. And admittedly, we were pretty tired by the time the parade ended and like everyone was really getting into the bars and the drinking aspect of the St. Patrick's Day celebrations. We had not slept that whole flight, and we were trying to get used to the 6-hour time change and also just kind of the surrealness of like so much stimulation and so much happening around us. So we were like, you know what? It's fine. We can call it a day at this point. We came, we saw, we conquered St. Patrick's Day in Dublin. So instead of staying in like Dublin proper, because as it turns out, all the hotels in that city were pretty pricey, which probably coincided with the fact that it was St. Patrick's Day and it was a weekend. So my cousin and I actually decided to stay in an Airbnb a bit more in the countryside, but still within the city of Dublin. And we absolutely loved it. And I will definitely link this Airbnb down below in the description if you want to check it out. It was basically like this really quiet kind of cottage type of place. But the part that I loved the most about where we stayed was the donkeys. It wasn't like a working farm, but this person did have 4 very sweet donkeys, and the house we stayed in was kind of like built up right up against their pasture. And so you could just walk up to the fence and these donkeys would come walking out of their little shed and come up to greet you. They were so cute. They were so friendly. And the Airbnb host also leaves out sliced apples like by the back door that you can feed the donkeys if you want. So I was just in love with this activity.
Donkeys!
Donkey! You feed them first.
Here they come. You want an apple? All right, I think I have to hold my hand out flat. Yum! Delicious!
Here, you get one. I'm scared.
Why don't just give it to him?
No, you give it to him. Ah! Give it to the black one.
This guy?
Did he just use his lips?
Yeah. Hello, donkeys. Oh, this one didn't get an apple. Oh, and that one didn't either. Hi, donkeys. Hello.
Sorry, buddy.
Hi, donkeys.
So, day 2 in Dublin was a much more eventful day for me and my cousin. And this was when we decided to do a lot more sightseeing. And so we were hitting up all the big sites we wanted to see: the Trinity College Library, Dublin Castle, St. Patrick's Cathedral. We really just decided to walk around Dublin and just see what we could find. And being able to tour these different places was really, really neat. I'm a librarian, and so getting to actually go inside the Trinity College Library and just see these floor-to-ceiling shelves of these like older books and all of the woodwork in there and the Book of Kells, like all of that was just warming my literary heart. And Dublin Castle was also really neat because it had all of this beautiful artwork inside, and the furniture was so grand, so big. I had never really been anywhere that's truly old before. What's that phrase? 100 miles is far to Europeans and 100 years is old to Americans. So yeah, that's basically how it was for me touring these different places in Dublin. So after our first 2 days of our trip in Dublin, my cousin and I packed up our stuff and we hit the road to head west to Cork. So Cork was the next up on our list, specifically because we wanted to go tour the Blarney Castle and, of course, kiss the Blarney Stone. Now, this is something that I admit is very ignorant of me because I specifically decided not to look it up beforehand. But whenever I had heard people talking about kissing the Blarney Stone, I had just always assumed that it was like just an actual like standalone rock, like planted somewhere on the ground, and like people just lined up and went and kissed it. I did not know that it's actually like a specific piece of limestone built into Blarney Castle, and it's at the very top of the castle. So you pay your entrance fee and you make your way up these like windy, narrow spiral stairs that are like hand cut from stone, and you finally get up to the very top, and then you have to lay on your back, you hang upside down, and you hold on to these 2 metal bars, and then you lean yourself back and you kiss this one specific stone that they point out to you.
Like they ran out and they weren't getting any more of the, so Charles doesn't want, so I think they're taking it away tomorrow. Fly back there now. Hold the bars behind. See the bottom stone?
Yes.
Okay. They don't want to buy any more of that stuff, so.
That was a very cool experience. I'm someone who's always up for a little adventure. So the fact that there was like a whole process to getting to the stone to kiss it, and you got to tour this castle, was very neat to me. There were also like little plaques within the different rooms of the castle that told you what their purpose was back in the day when it was like an actual home for people. My cousin was specifically fascinated by the murder hole that they had, where basically, I guess, if someone walked into the castle who they didn't want to be there, you could send them into like this trap door, and they'd fall way down into almost like a cellar type of space, and then they could like pour acid on you or whatever, and you die a horrible, painful, torturous death in the murder hole. So that was fun to learn. And for those who don't know, the whole idea behind kissing the Blarney Stone is that the theory is it gives you the gift of gab, which means that you will be bestowed certain gifts like eloquence, flattery, persuasiveness, and even the ability to deceive without offending. So I did it. I went and I kissed the Blarney Stone, and I guess I was given the gift of gab because now I'm holding a microphone in my hand and I feel very powerful with that. Also, it's not just the castle there that you can see. It's built onto this really beautiful grounds. And there's like this bigger, older type of mansion that you can view. And there's just all of this really lush green grass, beautiful flowers and trees. It's almost like walking through a botanic gardens, and there's all these little pathways you can take. There's also like a little cave there as well. So there's like little hiking trails you can take. There's like a lot of different fun little activities you can do to explore the whole grounds where Blarney Castle is. So we definitely made sure to take some time to check out what else was there, because the whole area was just so neat, so full and rich with history, and just really cool to be able to just explore and see everything that was around. And then our next stop after a night spent in Cork was heading up north along the west coast of Ireland so that we could see the cliffs of Moher. Now, the cliffs were the number one place on my Ireland bucket list to see. I absolutely love getting to be near water, and I had seen pictures of these cliffs and just seeing how incredibly majestic they looked, just jutting out into this blue sea down below. I just knew I had to see them. And they were everything I'd hoped they could be and more, let me just say. When you first walk up, you're kind of like still a bit far back, but as you walk along like kind of this gravel trail, there's suddenly a point where they have like this like danger sign, like, you know, the little person, like you're about to fall off the edge of a cliff. And at first I thought that meant like you can't pass that. Like all you can see is just this further back view of the cliffs. But I realized a ton of people were just like walking over that warning and just continuing on the trail. So that's what we did. And while there isn't any like guardrails in place, you're totally perfectly safe and fine to keep following the trail. And it leads you out to these like amazing overlooks on the cliffs. It was just the most breathtaking sight I had ever seen in my life up to that point. And I just get like this full panoramic view of cliffs and sea. Just so incredibly beautiful.
Gee.
And there's also this little castle that's at the edge of one of the cliffs, and you can wait in line to go up the little spiral staircase inside and look around the top. It's more like a lookout point, more so than an actual like functional castle, because it is very small. So it was fun to just like go up and explore that real quick. So if you are also someone who's really into seeing like really breathtaking sights, I would highly recommend the cliffs if you're going to go to Ireland. So in the same day that we toured the cliffs, we were heading towards Galway as our place to stay for the night. And on the way to Galway, my cousin and I decided just kind of last minute that we were going to make another stop at Doolin Cave. And this cave has the oldest stalactite in the world, I think. It's from the ice ages. Like you could see the different ice ages marked on the cave walls based on like when there was water and when it melted and when it was ice again. It was absolutely amazing. And it had, I think, the largest stalactite in the world. It was really neat. I love a good cave. I think they are just so neat, and it feels like you're exploring this like underworld, and Doolin Cave was definitely a fun one. It's kind of tucked away. You have to drive down almost like a dirt road to get there, but it was a really fun tour. And then once we were done with our sightseeing for the day, we headed on over to Galway. And I have to say, out of the 4 different cities that we stayed in Ireland on our trip, I think Galway was actually my absolute favorite. We headed into the city center, and you get to walk down these different like cobblestone alleyways, and there are just so many shops and restaurants around to check out. It had such a neat vibe to it. Part of me wished that we were staying longer instead of just one night, because it would have been really fun to get to like check out more of the nightlife in Galway. We did make sure to stop into O'Connell's bar, which has some fame to it because it was the place where Ed Sheeran shot his Galway Girl music video. And it was a really cool bar because when you walk in initially, it feels like it's like a very small room. But then the bartender saw us come in and he said, "Oh, there's like more space in the back if you go through that door back there." And we didn't even realize there was like an indiscriminate door. And we were like, "Oh, okay." And so we walked through, and it was like you just got led into room after room after room. Like you'd go through another door and there's like an outdoor patio, and then there's another spot where there's like a whole separate bar within the bar. And that was where I officially finally had my first Ireland Guinness. I had Guinness before in the US, but my dad and all my uncles were saying like, you got to get Guinness in Ireland because that's where it's freshest, because it's brewed there. So I did get myself a little half pint of Guinness and felt I was really doing the classic tourist thing in Ireland.
There we are. Cheers. Long shots, Ireland.
Yes, correct. In the pandemic,
But it was a good time, and the bar had a really great feel to it. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for just like a good Irish bar experience. O'Connell's was a fun one for sure. And my cousin and I also stayed at a little B&B in Galway, and this was one of my favorite places we stayed besides the Airbnb out in the Dublin countryside. You get these little rooms, so do be prepared. They are a little small, but what we really loved was getting to have breakfast in the morning because they give you a menu the night before and you pick what you're going to have. And then the host makes all the breakfasts and brings them out to you. And you get to sit in this beautiful dining area with this absolutely beautiful view of just like all these like rolling hills and trees that I didn't know existed like in the city of Galway. And it was just such a lovely breakfast experience. So highly recommend if you are going to be staying in Galway to do one of the little bed and breakfast places, because this one was phenomenal. And then the last city we were stopping in on our Ireland trip was Belfast in Northern Ireland. We were wondering when we were driving through Ireland if there was going to be any type of like border patrol, because the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland are technically 2 different countries, but it was just like crossing state lines in the US on the highway. Like we just kept driving and suddenly we were in Northern Ireland. And the first tourist stop on our list in Northern Ireland was to visit the Titanic Museum. If you didn't know, Belfast was the last city that the Titanic set sail from before it ended up sinking. And my cousin is very into the Titanic, like the movie specifically, but like also getting to learn anything more about the ship. So it was very neat to be able to go in and learn the whole history of like all the Irish who built this ship and what it looked like, you know, through each floor back in its heyday. There was just a lot of really neat information. So if that's something you are into, I highly recommend checking out the Titanic Museum because it covered a lot of information. And then our second day in Northern Ireland was a big travel day, kind of going all along the northern coast. So our first stop was at a place called the Dark Hedges, which were featured in the show Game of Thrones. And it's basically this pathway in what I guess you could call a mini forest. There's trees on either side of this trail, and then it's just like countryside outside of that. But these trees were so neat. They have sort of this like eerie look to them and shape. And they made for really cool pictures when we were out there. It was unlike any trees I'd ever seen in my life. And then next up was the Carrick-a-Rede rope bridge. And this was my number 2 most excited stop on the Ireland itinerary. I had seen this featured in other people's travel vlogs of Ireland, and I just knew immediately I had to go. So essentially, Carrick-a-Rede rope bridge is a rope bridge that connects in Little Island to the mainland, and the whole area is an actual dormant volcano, which I did not know until I went and started getting information about it. You do need to make a reservation in advance if you want to do the rope bridge, so just know that they do timed entry, and if it's too windy, they will close the rope bridge. And I was worried that that was going to happen to us because all along the coast of Northern Ireland, it was so windy. It was windy at the Dark Hedges. It was extremely windy at the rope bridge and the other places we went afterwards. So just be prepared that certain things may be closed if it's too windy. And also make sure you have a good windbreaker jacket with you because it got a little intense at certain points. But the rope bridge was really cool to be able to cross. And I think that was probably the absolute most beautiful scenic sight that I saw in all of Ireland. Like there is nothing like the northern coast of Ireland. It's so incredibly beautiful. And so once we were done checking out the rope bridge, it was just a short drive further west along the coast to get to our next stop, which was Giant's Causeway. And this is a really neat spot. You start up like much higher up, like you have to almost like hike this trail that starts out flat and like you gain all this elevation, and eventually you get to this point where there's all these stairs that are going to lead you down into almost kind of like a canyon type of feel, but you've got the water right there. And you essentially walk out onto this plain of hexagonal rocks that just naturally formed in that shape. And then you have the sea just crashing up against the rocks. And I mentioned that it was windy in Northern Ireland. It was the windiest at Giant's Causeway. Holy crap. I had never felt wind gusts that strong, and I imagine it's similar to what it feels like to be in a hurricane, because some of these wind gusts, I could feel them like actually pushing me a bit, and like walking into the wind, like I was kind of leaning forward a bit. It was wild. I had never experienced a sensation like that before in my life, but it was so neat because then you have these waves that crash up over the stones and you have the wind whipping around you and it's got mountains behind you, and it's just the absolute most incredible experience in Ireland for sure.
Made it to Giant's Causeway.
And so once we were done with all of those bigger adventure spots, we decided to make one more stop a little bit further west to Dunluce Castle, which was built in the 1500s, and it did house like actual families back in the day. And it doesn't have a roof anymore or anything, but like the actual stone structure still stands. And it was really neat to be able to walk through there and just kind of envision what all the different rooms were used for. And I also love castles. So the chance to get to like visit an actual real original castle was very, very cool. And so that basically rounded up our entire week in Ireland. So I did want to share a few other travel tips about Ireland in case you were interested in going. So my cousin and I rented a car for this journey, and while I do feel like that was the best way and most efficient way to be able to get around the whole country, renting a car in Ireland is expensive. Like, first off, if you don't know how to drive stick, it costs a lot more to rent an automatic as opposed to a stick. So price is already going up there. Also, the gas in Ireland is so expensive, and it doesn't look that bad at first. Like when you're pulling up to a gas station, then it shows you the price. It's very deceiving, and you're like, oh, that's not bad at all. And then you realize that they're charging you per liter, not per gallon. And also the gas stations in Ireland are like pump and pay. So you pump your gas first and then you go inside to the clerk and you pay them the total. And another thing, when you are trying to navigate your way around, the street names are not going to be on like poles on the corners of different streets like you would see a lot in the US. They're usually placards that are on the side of buildings that are on the corner. And we also found, surprisingly, that there were quite a few restaurants that would stop serving dinner after 7 p.m. And then they would just kind of turn into like a bar, like drinks only. At least that's what we found when we were in Galway. So it might not be true everywhere, but just a thing to keep in mind, that if you're looking to do like a late night dinner while you're out in Ireland, that might be a little tricky depending on where you go. So thank you for watching this travel vlog recap. And I hope that this was able to give you some insight for your own trip to Ireland if you are planning to go. If you have any sites that you have seen in Ireland that you would highly recommend for anyone traveling through there, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. Also, if you want to follow me on Instagram, I have one now. I just made it, and it's documenting pretty much any trip I go on. So if you're interested in seeing that, go ahead and follow. My Instagram handle is CaitlinTravels101. I have no followers on that Instagram account right now. So basically what I'm saying is, first person to follow my Instagram page gets a free trip to Cabo. No, I'm kidding. Can you imagine if that was my strategy for gaining Instagram followers? Anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up here. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.